I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who questioned her husband's loyalty. Marcus and I had been married for 14 years, and in all that time I'd trusted him the way you trust gravity, completely, without thought. But standing in my kitchen that Tuesday afternoon, listening to my 12-year-old daughter tell me what she'd seen, I felt that trust crack down the middle like ice on a frozen lake. "Mom, I'm telling you, they were acting weird," Emma said, her backpack still hanging from one shoulder as she grabbed an apple from the fruit bowl. "Dad and some lady were in the garage, and when I came around the corner, they both got really quiet and jumped apart." I kept my hands busy rinsing the lunch dishes even though they were already clean. "Emma, your dad probably just ran into an old friend. You know how small this town is." "It wasn't just talking, though." Emma's voice took on that insistent tone she'd inherited from my side of the family. "They were whispering. Like, really close together, and when they saw me, the lady looked scared. Actually scared, Mum." I turned off the faucet and dried my hands slowly, buying myself time to think. Marcus worked from home 3 days a week as a software consultant, and it wasn't unusual for him to be around the house during the day. But meeting someone in our garage, that was strange. "What did your father say when you asked him about it?" Emma shifted her weight from foot to foot. "He said she was an old friend who needed some advice, that her name was Vanessa and she was going through a hard time. Then he told me not to bother you with it because you've been stressed about Grandma." That last part stung because it was true. My mother had been diagnosed with early-stage dementia 6 months ago, and I'd been driving to her house in Pinecrest 3 times a week to help sort through her finances and medical appointments. Marcus knew how much it was weighing on me. He'd been nothing but supportive and taking on more of the household responsibilities, handling Emma's school pickup when I couldn't make it back in time. Which was exactly why this conversation felt so disorienting. "Okay, I said, forcing my voice to stay level. "I'll talk to him about it, but Emma, I don't want you worrying about adult stuff, all right? Your dad and I are fine." She gave me a look that was far too knowing for 12 years old. "You always say that." After she headed upstairs to do homework, I stood alone in the kitchen and let myself feel the first real tremor of doubt. Vanessa. The name meant nothing to me. Marcus had mentioned his ex-girlfriend from college a handful of times over the years. Her name was Sarah. And last I'd heard, she'd moved to Seattle and gotten married. But Vanessa, that was new. I pulled out my phone and typed the name into our shared calendar, our text history, even his social media. Nothing. If she was someone from his past, she'd left no digital footprint in our present. The garage door opened just after 5, and Marcus came in carrying groceries, something he'd started doing without being asked, another one of those thoughtful gestures that had defined our marriage. He was still handsome in the way that made my college friends jealous at reunions, tall with dark hair just starting to grey at the temples, and that easy smile that had first caught my attention sophomore year. "What? Hey, beautiful," he said, setting the bags on the counter and kissing my cheek. "I grabbed that fancy cheese you like. Thought we could do a nice dinner tonight since Emma's got that project she's working on." "Marcus." I kept my tone neutral. "Emma said someone stopped by today. A woman named Vanessa." The pause was microscopic, barely a half second, but I'd been married to this man long enough to catch it. His smile didn't falter, but something behind his eyes shifted, like a door closing. "Oh yeah, old friend from grad school. She's going through a divorce and needed some advice on the tech side of things, splitting digital assets, that kind of thing. I told her I'd take a look at some documents for her." "In our garage?" He laughed, and it sounded genuine. "She called when I was organizing the storage shelves. You know how you've been after me to finally sort through those boxes? I was actually doing it when she showed up. We talked out there because I didn't want to track dust through the house." It was plausible, more than plausible. It was exactly the kind of mundane explanation that real life was full of. And yet, why didn't you mention it? Marcus started unpacking groceries, his movements relaxed. Honestly, I forgot. She was only here for about 20 minutes, and then I got pulled into that conference call with the Denver clients. It wasn't a secret, Jenna, just one of those things that didn't seem important enough to text about. I watched him put away the milk, the vegetables, the fancy cheese. Everything about his body language said this was no big deal, that I was worrying over nothing. Maybe Emma had misread the situation. Maybe 12-year-olds were prone to drama, and I was feeding into it. Okay, I said. I just wanted to make sure everything was all right. He came over and wrapped his arms around me, pulling me close. Everything's fine, I promise. You've got enough on your plate with your mom. The last thing I want is for you to be worrying about imaginary problems. That should have been the end of it. In a normal marriage, in the marriage I thought we had, it would have been. But that night, after Marcus fell asleep beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling and couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. Not in what he'd said, but in what he hadn't said, in that microscopic pause before he answered. The next morning, I did something I had never done before. I went into the garage. It looked exactly like Marcus had described, boxes pulled down from the upper shelves, their contents partially sorted into piles. There were old textbooks, holiday decorations, Emma's baby clothes that I'd been meaning to donate for years. Nothing suspicious. Nothing out of place. But as I turned to leave, I noticed something tucked behind the recycling bins. A wadded-up piece of paper, the kind you'd quickly shove somewhere if you heard someone coming. I pulled it out and smoothed it flat. It was a receipt from a restaurant called Marcello's, dated yesterday. 2 entrees, 2 glasses of wine, paid for at 1:47 p.m. Marcus had been home all day yesterday, or at least, that's what I'd thought. I took a photo of the receipt with my phone, then put it back exactly where I'd found it. My hands were shaking. There could be a perfectly reasonable explanation for this too. Maybe he'd grabbed lunch with a client and forgotten to mention it. Maybe, "Mom, you out here?" I jumped as Emma appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas. "Just looking for the Halloween decorations," I lied. "Thought I'd get a head start this year." "Halloween's not for 3 months. I'm very organized." Emma rolled her eyes, but smiled. "Dad made pancakes. They're getting cold." I followed her back inside, where Marcus was indeed flipping pancakes, humming to himself. He looked so normal, so perfectly like the man I'd built a life with, that I almost convinced myself I was being paranoid. Almost. Over breakfast, I casually asked, "Did you go out at all yesterday? I was thinking we need to restock the coffee, and I wasn't sure if you'd already grabbed some." "Nope. Worked straight through," Marcus said without hesitation. "That Denver call went long, and then I had to fix that bug in the Patterson project. Was at my desk until you got home." He was lying. I knew he was lying, but I didn't know why. The next 3 days passed in a haze of forced normalcy. I drove to my mother's house and helped her organize her medications while fighting the urge to scream. I made dinner and helped Emma study for her history test and did all the things a wife and mother was supposed to do, all while feeling like I was watching my life through a window. Marcus was attentive, affectionate, exactly as he'd always been. We watched our favourite show together. We made love on Thursday night. He remembered to pick up my prescription from the pharmacy without being reminded. And I searched for Vanessa. It took hours of digging through old social media posts, cross-referencing Marcus's grad school friends, following digital trails that mostly led nowhere. But finally, late Friday night while Marcus was in the shower, I found her. Vanessa Sutton. She'd been in Marcus's cohort at graduate school, though they'd apparently run in different circles. Her profile was private, but her profile picture showed a woman in her late 30s with copper-coloured hair and a warm smile. Her location was listed as Riverside, the town next to ours, less than a 20-minute drive away. Was. I clicked on her friends list and felt my stomach drop. Marcus wasn't listed. If they were just old friends reconnecting, why weren't they connected online? "You coming to bed?" I nearly dropped my phone. Marcus stood in the doorway in his pajama pants, his hair still damp from the shower. Just checking my mum's appointment schedule, I said, closing the browser. I think I need to move her cardiology visit to next week. He climbed into bed beside me, and I forced myself to cuddle against him like everything was fine. Like I hadn't just discovered that his old friend lived right next door, and they apparently had no public connection. That weekend, Emma had a sleepover at her best friend Mia's house. Marcus suggested we take advantage of the kid-free evening to go out to dinner, maybe catch a movie. It was sweet, thoughtful, exactly what the old us would have done. Actually, I said, I was thinking I might drive over to my mom's. She mentioned wanting help organising the photos in her attic, and it's easier to do that kind of project without Emma needing attention. Disappointment flickered across Marcus's face. Want me to come with you? No, you should relax. You've been working so hard lately. I kissed his cheek. I'll be back by 10 or so. I did drive towards my mother's house, but when I reached the highway exit, I kept going past it, heading instead toward Riverside, toward the address I'd found listed for Vanessa Sutton. I had no plan. No idea what I was doing or what I'd say if I actually found her. I just knew I needed to see something with my own eyes, needed to confirm that this sick feeling in my gut was either justified or completely insane. Vanessa's address led me to a small apartment complex on the east side of town, the kind with exterior corridors and a pool that had seen better days. I parked across the street and sat there, feeling ridiculous. What was I going to do? Knock on her door? Demand to know why she'd been whispering with my husband in my garage? I was about to start the car and leave when I saw him. Marcus's silver sedan pulled into the parking lot, and my husband got out, checking his phone before walking purposefully toward one of the ground floor units. He knocked, and the door opened immediately. Vanessa stood in the doorway, and even from a distance, I could see the way her face lit up when she saw him. It wasn't the look of someone greeting an old friend who was helping with divorce paperwork. It was something else entirely. He went inside, the door closed behind him. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Part of me wanted to storm across that parking lot, to bang on that door and demand answers. But another part, the part that had sustained me through 14 years of marriage and motherhood, told me to wait. To be smart about this. So I waited. Marcus stayed inside for 93 minutes. I counted every one of them. When he finally emerged, his shirt was untucked in a way it hadn't been when he went in. Vanessa stood in the doorway watching him leave, her arms wrapped around herself. They didn't kiss goodbye, didn't embrace, but the intimacy in the way they looked at each other told me everything I needed to know. I drove home on autopilot, my mind cycling through rage and disbelief and a strange, distant numbness. When I walked through the front door at 9:47 p.m., Marcus was on the couch watching basketball. Hey, you're early. How's your mom? I stood in the doorway and looked at him, really looked at him, and wondered how many other times he'd lied to my face, how many other Saturday evenings he'd spent with her while I was conveniently out of the house. She's fine, I heard myself say. Just tired. We didn't get as much done as I thought. Come here. He patted the couch beside him. Game's close. I sat down and he put his arm around me, and I let him, even though my skin crawled at his touch, because I needed time to think, time to figure out what I was going to do. That night, I started making a list. I didn't write it down. I wasn't that foolish, but I catalogued everything in my mind. Every late meeting that might not have been a meeting. Every business trip that might not have been business. Every time he'd encouraged me to go see my mother, to take Emma to visit her grandmother, to give him space to work without interruption. How long had this been going on? On Monday, I called in sick to work, something I rarely did, and drove to Marcello's, the restaurant from the receipt. It was a small Italian place in a strip mall, the kind that looked romantic in a dated, red checkered tablecloth kind of way. "I'm hoping you can help me," I told the hostess, a young woman with elaborate eyeliner. "My husband surprised me with lunch here last week, and I wanted to do something nice for our anniversary. Can you tell me if he made a reservation? Marcus Chen." She tapped on her computer. "I'm not seeing a reservation, but we don't require them for lunch. Was there something specific he ordered that you wanted to recreate?" I showed her the photo of the receipt. "Does this help?" She squinted at it. "Oh yeah, I remember this. They sat in the back corner, the table by the window. Nice couple. They were here for like 2 hours, just talking. She was crying for part of it." "She?" I kept my voice steady. "Oh right, his sister. She's going through a hard time." "That's sweet of him to take her out. They seemed really close." The hostess smiled like she'd just given me good news. I thanked her and left before she could see my face crumble. Vanessa had been crying. Marcus had comforted her for 2 hours over wine and pasta, while I'd been at home, probably folding his laundry or paying our bills or doing any of the 1,000 invisible things that kept our life running. That afternoon, I picked Emma up from school and took her for ice cream, something I usually saved for special occasions. "What's going on?" she asked, ever perceptive. "Did somebody die?" "No, honey. I just thought we could use some girl time." I watched her dig into her mint chocolate chip. "You know you can talk to me about anything, right? If something's worrying you, or if you notice something weird." Emma's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. "Is this about Dad and that lady? What else have you noticed?" She looked uncomfortable. "I don't want to get anyone in trouble." "You won't. I promise. I just need to know the truth." Emma took a breath. "She's been here before, that Vanessa lady. I saw her here like a month ago, maybe longer. I was homesick from school, remember? That day I had the stomach bug. I went downstairs to get ginger ale and I saw her car pulling out of the driveway. I asked Dad about it later, and he said a friend had stopped by to drop something off." "A month ago. At least a month ago. Did you ever see her again?" "I don't know. Maybe. There was this one time when Dad picked me up from soccer practice, and we stopped at the grocery store. He saw someone in the parking lot and told me to wait in the car. He was talking to some woman by her car for like 15 minutes. I couldn't see who it was, but when he came back he seemed weird. Distracted." Every revelation was a knife sliding between my ribs. "Thank you for telling me, sweetheart. You did the right thing. Are you and Dad okay?" I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "We're going to be fine, all of us, I promise." It was a promise I didn't know if I could keep. That night, I waited until Marcus was asleep before slipping out of bed and going to his office. His laptop was password protected, but I knew the password. It was Emma's birthday, the same code he'd used for years. I felt like a criminal opening it, even though I was his wife, even though I had every right to know what was happening in my own marriage. His email was disappointingly clean. No secret correspondence, no love letters, nothing but work messages and the usual spam. But when I checked his browser history, which he'd apparently forgotten to clear, I found it. Google searches for how to tell your wife you want a divorce. How to split assets in a divorce fairly. Can you date someone while separated? How long does divorce take in this state? The searches were dated from 3 weeks ago, a full 3 weeks before Emma had caught them in the garage. This wasn't a sudden thing, some moment of weakness. Marcus had been planning this, researching it, figuring out how to dismantle our life while I'd been completely oblivious. I took screenshots of everything and emailed them to myself from an old account he didn't know about. Then I cleared the sent folder and closed the laptop, my hands remarkably steady considering my entire world was collapsing. Back in bed, I lay beside my husband and felt like I was sleeping next to a stranger. In the darkness, I could hear him breathing, slow and even, peaceful, like he didn't have a care in the world. The next morning, I called my best friend Rachel from my car before heading into work. "I need you to be honest with me," I said without preamble. Has Marcus said anything to you or Dave? Anything about being unhappy or wanting out or anything? Rachel was quiet for a long moment. Jenna, what's going on? Just answer the question. Dave mentioned that Marcus seemed distracted at poker night last month. Said he wasn't really present, kept checking his phone. But that's it. Why? What happened? I gave her the abbreviated version. Vanessa, the restaurant receipt, the late-night visit to her apartment, the browser history. Rachel listened without interrupting, which I appreciated. Okay, she said when I finished. Okay, first thing, you need a lawyer. Not to file anything yet, but to know your options. And second, you need to decide if you're going to confront him or if you're going to gather more evidence first. Evidence for what? For the divorce, Jenna. Because that's where this is heading. And if he's already researching how to split assets, you need to make sure you're protected. What about your finances? Are they all joint? I hadn't even thought about that. Mostly joint. I have my own checking account from before we got married, but it's pretty small. The house is in both our names. Retirement accounts are separate, but similar amounts. Check everything. Bank accounts, credit cards, investments. Make copies of all documents. And Jenna, do it today, before he knows you know. Hoitiu. I spent my lunch break in the bank printing out statements and account summaries. Our finances looked normal. No secret accounts, no large withdrawals, no hidden credit cards. At least there was that. But as I sat in the bank's bland conference room, surrounded by papers documenting 14 years of shared life, I felt the full weight of what was coming. This was really happening. My marriage was ending, and I hadn't even known it was sick. That evening, I made Marcus's favourite dinner. Pot roast with roasted vegetables, the meal I used to make for special occasions. He came downstairs, sniffing the air appreciatively. What's the occasion? No occasion, just felt like cooking something nice. I smiled at him across the table, and it felt like my face might crack from the effort. How was work? Busy. The Patterson project is finally coming together, though. Should be able to wrap it up by Friday. He reached for the wine I'd poured. This is great, Jen. Thank you. We ate dinner like a normal family. Emma told us about her day, about the boy in her class who'd gotten in trouble for bringing his pet lizard to school. Marcus laughed in all the right places. I asked follow-up questions. We were performing normalcy so well that even I almost believed it. After Emma went upstairs to do homework, I loaded the dishwasher while Marcus checked his phone. I watched him in the reflection of the kitchen window, the slight smile that crossed his face as he read something, the quick glance towards the stairs to make sure Emma wasn't coming back down. Everything okay? I asked. He put the phone away quickly. Yeah, just a message from the Denver client. They're happy with the latest update. Another lie. I was getting good at cataloguing them. That night, I initiated sex. It felt clinical, mechanical, like I was gathering evidence of something, though I couldn't have said what. Marcus was enthusiastic, attentive, exactly as he'd always been. Afterward, as he fell asleep with his arm around me, I stared at the ceiling and wondered if Vanessa knew he'd just made love to his wife. If she cared. If he felt guilty. On Wednesday, I did something that surprised even me. I called Vanessa. I'd found her number through a People Search website, one of those creepy services that collected public records. My hands shook as I dialed. Hello? Her voice was softer than I'd expected. Uncertain. Is this Vanessa Sutton? Yes. Who's this? This is Jenna Chen, Marcus's wife. The silence on the other end was deafening. I heard her sharp intake of breath. Then nothing. I know about you, I continued, keeping my voice level. I know you've been seeing my husband. I'm not calling to yell at you or threaten you. I just want to understand what's happening. Woman to woman. I can't talk about this right now. When can you talk about it? Wahasat. Because this is my marriage and my daughter's father, and I deserve to know what's going on. Another long pause. Then, does Marcus know you're calling me? No. He told me. She stopped, seemed to reconsider. This isn't how I wanted this to happen. How did you want it to happen? I was surprised by the steadiness in my voice. Were you going to wait until he asked for a divorce? Or were you just going to keep meeting in secret until I figured it out on my own? It's not like that. You don't understand. Then help me understand. Vanessa let out a shaky breath. Can we meet? Not at my apartment. Somewhere public. Tomorrow, maybe? There's a coffee shop on 4th Street. The Purple Mug. 1 p.m. Okay, I'll be there. She paused. Jenna, I'm sorry, I know that doesn't help, but I am. She hung up before I could respond. I sat in my car in the grocery store parking lot. I'd driven there for privacy, and let myself shake. This was real. I was about to sit down with my husband's mistress and hear whatever story she'd constructed to justify destroying my family. But I needed to hear it, needed to understand. The next day crawled by. I called into work again, claiming a family emergency that wasn't exactly a lie. I spent the morning organising my mother's medical files, grateful for the distraction, even as she kept asking me if everything was all right. You look tired, sweetheart, she said, her hand covering mine. Are you taking care of yourself? I'm fine, Mom, just busy. She gave me a look that said she didn't believe me but wouldn't push. The dementia hadn't taken that away from her yet, the ability to read her daughter's face and know when something was wrong. So at 12:45, I arrived at the Purple Mug and ordered a coffee I didn't want. I chose a table in the back corner with a view of the door. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus asking what I wanted for dinner, and the casual domesticity of it made me want to scream. Vanessa walked in at 1:03. In person, she was prettier than her photo, with that copper hair pulled back in a ponytail and eyes that were red-rimmed like she'd been crying. She ordered nothing, just walked straight to my table. Thank you for coming, I said, surprising myself with my politeness. She sat down, clutching her purse like it was a shield. I almost didn't. But you did, so talk. Vanessa looked down at her hands. How much has Marcus told you? Assume he's told me nothing. She nodded, seeming to gather her courage. We met in grad school, but we barely knew each other then. We reconnected 6 months ago. I was going through a divorce, that part was true. I reached out to people from school looking for advice on digital asset protection, and Marcus responded. We met for coffee to discuss it, and it was supposed to be just that one time. Professional. But we talked for 3 hours, and then we started emailing. And then you started an affair with my husband. It wasn't an affair. She looked up, her eyes pleading. Not at first. We were just friends. He was so kind about everything with my ex-husband, so understanding. And I know how this sounds. Believe me. I'm not proud of any of this, but Marcus was unhappy, Jenna. He told me, don't, my voice came out sharp. Don't tell me my husband was unhappy in our marriage like that justifies anything. I'm not trying to justify it, I'm trying to explain. Vanessa's hands were shaking now. He said you two had grown apart, that you were both just going through the motions, that he'd been thinking about leaving for years but stayed for Emma. The coffee shop noise faded to nothing. Years? That's what he told me. I'm sorry, Jenna, I truly am. If I'd known you didn't know any of this. What did you think? That he'd asked for a divorce and we were separated? Her silence was answer enough. I felt something cold settle in my chest. He lied to you too. We haven't been growing apart. We haven't been going through the motions. Up until 2 weeks ago, I thought we were happy. I thought we were solid. Vanessa's face went pale. He said you knew things weren't working, that you were both being civil for Emma's sake, but that you understood it was over. Well, he lied. I leaned forward. So here's what I need to know. Are you in love with him? She didn't answer immediately, which was answer enough. And does he love you? He says he does. Her voice was barely audible. He says he's going to tell you soon, that he's just waiting for the right time. I laughed, and it sounded bitter even to my own ears. The right time. Like there's ever a right time to blow up your family. Jenna, I never meant for this to happen, I swear to you. When we reconnected, I was so broken from my divorce. My ex had cheated on me, and finding out destroyed me. I never thought I'd be the other woman. Never. And yet here you are. She flinched. Here I am. We sat in silence for a long moment. Around us, people ordered lattes and worked on laptops and lived their uncomplicated lives. What do you want from Marcus? I finally asked. A relationship? Marriage? What's the end game here? I just want him to be happy. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. And I know that sounds like a cop-out, but it's true. If he's happier with you, if his marriage can be fixed, then I'll step aside. But he keeps saying it can't be fixed, that it's been broken for too long. Did he tell you why we got married? She shook her head. We got married because I was pregnant with Emma. Unplanned, unexpected, and terrifying. We were 23 years old and barely knew each other, really. We'd only been dating for 7 months, but Marcus stepped up. He proposed, and he meant it. And we built a real marriage out of what started as an obligation. I felt tears threatening but pushed them back. We built something real, Vanessa. Something worth fighting for. And now you're telling me he's been lying about it being broken while researching divorce lawyers? Her face crumbled. I didn't know. Jenna, I swear I didn't know he was lying. About any of it. Doesn't matter now, does it? I stood up, suddenly exhausted. You've been sleeping with my husband. You've been crying on his shoulder in restaurants. You've been the person he thinks about when he should be thinking about his family. So congratulations. You won. I don't feel like I won anything. Vanessa was crying openly now. I feel sick. Good, I said and walked out. I sat in my car and called Rachel. How did it go? She asked immediately. She's in love with him, and Marcus has been lying to both of us. I pressed my fingers against my eyes. He told her we'd been unhappy for years, Rachel. Years, but I had no idea. How could I have no idea my own husband was miserable? Maybe because he wasn't miserable. Maybe he's rewriting history to justify what he's doing. That possibility hit me like a punch. You think he's lying to her? I think people tell themselves whatever story they need to in order to sleep at night. And if Marcus is having an affair, he needs to believe the marriage was already dead. But what if it was? I whispered. What if I just didn't see it? Jenna Chen, I've known you for 15 years. I've watched you and Marcus together. You weren't in a dead marriage. You were in a normal marriage with normal ups and downs. He doesn't get to pretend otherwise just because he met someone new. I wanted to believe her, desperately. That evening, I watched Marcus play with Emma in the backyard, pushing her on the tire swing we'd hung from the old oak tree 3 summers ago. They were laughing, and he looked so much like the man I'd married, the man who'd held our newborn daughter with tears in his eyes and promised to be the best father in the world. How did that man become this man, the one who lied and snuck around and researched divorce while still kissing me goodnight? Emma came running in as the sun set. Dad says we can have movie night. Can we watch the new superhero movie? Sure, baby, whatever you want. Marcus followed her inside, his hand briefly touching my lower back as he passed, an unconscious gesture of familiarity. You okay? You seem quiet. Just tired, long day with my mom. He kissed my temple. Why don't you take a bath? I'll handle movie night with Em. It was so normal, so perfectly in character that I almost convinced myself I'd imagined everything. But then his phone buzzed on the counter and I saw the preview of the text. Thank you for listening today. I don't know what I'd do without you. Marcus grabbed the phone quickly, but not quickly enough. Work thing, he said, not meeting my eyes. I went upstairs without responding. In our bathroom, I ran the bath and sat on the edge of the tub watching the water rise. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I felt oddly calm, like I'd crossed over into some new territory where emotions didn't quite reach. I knew what I needed to do. The question was whether I had the courage to do it. The next morning, while Marcus was in the shower, I took his phone. His passcode was the same as his laptop, Emma's birthday. I scrolled through his texts with Vanessa, months of conversation that made me feel like I was reading about strangers. Inside jokes I wasn't part of, plans made around my schedule, complaints about his life that I'd never heard him voice to me. One text from 3 weeks ago. I told her I had a late meeting. We can have dinner at your place. Another from 2 weeks ago. She's taking Emma to her mum's on Saturday. We'll have the whole afternoon. And one from yesterday, sent while I was meeting with Vanessa. Dealing with some stress, can I call you later? But there was nothing explicitly sexual. No love letters, no intimate photos, just the everyday intimacy of two people who talked constantly, who shared everything, who had built a relationship in the shadows of my marriage. I took screenshots of everything and sent them to my secure email. Then I put the phone back exactly where I'd found it. Marcus came out of the bathroom in his bathrobe, smiling. Hey, I was thinking we could do something fun this weekend. Maybe drive up to the lake house? It's been too long since we had a family trip. The lake house, where we'd spent our first anniversary, where Emma had taken her first steps, where we'd made love on the deck under the stars and talked about the future we'd build together. Sure, I said. That sounds nice. His smile widened. Great. I'll make sure work is covered. I wondered if he'd tell Vanessa he'd be out of town, if she'd be disappointed, if she'd text him while we were supposed to be reconnecting as a family. I had 3 days before the weekend. 3 days to figure out what I was going to do. On Friday afternoon, I made a decision. I called a lawyer. Her name was Patricia Reeves, and Rachel had recommended her after a quick search of divorce attorneys in our area. She had a no-nonsense voice and fit me in for an emergency consultation that afternoon. I'm not saying I want a divorce, I told her as I sat in her office surrounded by law books and framed degrees. I just need to know my options. Smart, Patricia said. Tell me everything. I did. The whole story, from Emma catching them in the garage to my meeting with Vanessa to the screenshots on my phone. Patricia listened without judgment, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. First, the good news. You're in an equitable distribution state, which means assets are divided fairly but not necessarily 50-50. Given the length of your marriage and the fact that you've both been working and contributing, you're looking at a relatively straightforward split if it comes to that. And the bad news? The affair itself won't matter much legally. This isn't a fault state. What matters is the finances, custody arrangements, and whether you two can agree on the terms, or if it'll get messy. She tapped her pen on the pad. But here's what I'm concerned about. He's already researching divorce. He's planning. You need to make sure you're prepared too, whether you decide to try to save the marriage or end it. What does being prepared look like? Document everything. Open your own bank account if you don't have one. Make sure you have copies of all financial records, tax returns, mortgage documents. Don't let him know you know. Not yet. And most importantly, figure out what you want, because you can't move forward until you know that. What did I want? I wanted my marriage back. The one I thought I had. But that marriage had apparently been an illusion. Or at least it had become one somewhere along the way without me noticing. Did I want to fight for Marcus? Try to rebuild what he'd been quietly dismantling? Or did I want to walk away with my dignity intact? I left Patricia's office with a folder full of documents and a head full of questions. The weekend at the lake house loomed like a test I hadn't studied for. That night, Emma asked me to help her pack. Are you excited about the lake? I asked, folding her swimsuit. Yeah, I guess. She sat on her bed, picking at her comforter. Mom, can I ask you something? Always. Are you and Dad getting divorced? My hands stilled. What makes you ask that? I hear things. You guys are being too nice to each other, like you're being careful. She looked up at me with eyes too old for her face. And ever since I told you about that lady, you've been different, sad, even when you're smiling. I sat down beside her and pulled her close. Your dad and I are going through some stuff, adult stuff, but whatever happens, it doesn't change how much we both love you. That's never going to change, okay? Is he in love with that lady? Vanessa? The question knocked the air out of my lungs. Why would you think that? Because of the way they looked at each other. In the garage. It's the way people look at each other in movies before they kiss. I held my daughter while she cried, and I cried too, and neither of us said what we were both thinking. That our family was breaking apart, and there might be no way to put it back together. Saturday morning, we loaded up the car for the lake. Marcus was cheerful, keeping up a steady stream of conversation about the weather forecast and which restaurants had opened since we'd last visited. Emma sat in the back seat with her earbuds in, staring out the window. The lake house looked exactly as it always did. A small cabin painted forest green, nestled among pine trees with a view of the water. We'd bought it 5 years ago with money from Marcus's first big bonus, and it had been our haven, the place where we escaped the ordinary pressures of life. Now it felt like a stage set for a play I didn't want to perform in. I'll get the groceries, Marcus said, hauling bags toward the kitchen. Want to help? Emma grudgingly followed him inside, and I stood alone on the porch looking out at the lake. The water was calm, reflecting the sky like glass. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. He told me he had a family obligation this weekend. I just wanted you to know I didn't ask him to lie. Vanessa was texting me now. That was new. And I typed back, I know. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, for what it's worth, I think he really does love you. He just doesn't know how to deal with whatever's broken. I didn't respond. What could I say? The weekend passed in a fog. We grilled burgers and went swimming and played board games in the evening. Marcus and I slept in the same bed, though we didn't touch. Emma seemed to relax slightly, laughing at her father's jokes, though I caught her watching us both with worried eyes when she thought we weren't looking. On Sunday evening, as we packed up to leave, Marcus suggested we take a walk down to the dock, just the 2 of us. Emma's busy with her book, he said. We could use some couple time. I followed him down the narrow path to the water. The sun was setting, painting everything gold and orange. It would have been romantic if my heart wasn't breaking. Jenna, Marcus said when we reached the dock, I need to talk to you about something. This was it. He was going to tell me. Finally, after months of lying, he was going to end our marriage. Okay, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. He took my hand and I let him, even though it felt like touching a live wire. I know I've been distant lately, distracted, and I'm sorry for that. Work has been crazy, and I've been stressed, and I've probably been taking it out on you and Emma without meaning to. I waited. But being here this weekend, seeing you with Em, being together as a family, it reminded me why I married you, why I've stayed in love with you all these years. He wasn't going to tell me. He was going to lie again. Marcus, I said softly, I met Vanessa. The colour drained from his face. What? I called her. We had coffee. She told me everything. I pulled my hand away. So please don't insult me by pretending this weekend was some kind of genuine reconnection. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Jenna, it's not... She's not... Don't, I held up my hand. Don't lie to me anymore. I've read your texts. I've seen the searches on your laptop. I know about the restaurant, about the afternoons at her apartment, about everything. So please, just tell me the truth. For once. Marcus sank down onto the dock, his head in his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were red. I never meant for this to happen. That's what she said too. I was going to tell you, I swear I was, I just didn't know how. He wiped at his eyes. You're right, about all of it. I've been seeing Vanessa, and I've been lying to you, and I've been the worst husband in the world. Are you in love with her? I don't know. His voice cracked. Maybe. But I love you too, Jenna. I've always loved you. This isn't about you not being enough. It's about me being broken somehow. When did it start? The truth this time? 6 months ago, like she probably told you. We ran into each other online and it was supposed to be just advice, just helping a friend. But we started talking more and she was going through something hard and I felt needed in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. And then it turned into something else. Have you slept with her? He hesitated just long enough to tell me the truth before he said it. Yes. The word hung in the air between us. Yes. Simple, devastating, final. How many times? Jenna. How many times did you sleep with another woman and then come home and sleep next to me? 4 times? 5, maybe, I don't know. Does it matter? I laughed, bitter and sharp. Of course it matters, everything matters. Every lie you told, every time you touched me after touching her, every family dinner where you sat there planning your exit, it all matters. I'm sorry. He was crying now, really crying. I'm so sorry, Jenna. I don't know how to fix this. I don't even know if I want to stay, and that makes me the worst person alive, but I promised you the truth. There it was. After 14 years, after a daughter together, after building a life from scratch, he didn't know if he wanted to stay. Then don't, I heard myself say. Don't stay if you don't want to be here. But Emma already knows something's wrong. She asked me this week if we were getting divorced. I looked at my husband, the man I'd built my adult life around, and felt nothing but exhaustion. So here's what's going to happen. We're going to drive home tonight like normal, and tomorrow you're going to pack a bag and move out. Not forever, maybe. Just until we figure out what happens next. Jenna, please, can't we try counselling? Work on this? Can we? I met his eyes. Because it sounds like you've already made your choice. You just want me to be the one who pulls the trigger so you don't have to feel guilty. He flinched like I'd hit him. If you want to save this marriage, then cut off contact with Vanessa. Completely. Block her number, delete her from your life, and show me you're willing to fight for us. But if you can't do that, if you're still in love with her or whatever you think you are, then have the courage to be honest about it. Stop living in both worlds. I can do that. I can cut her off. I will. He reached for my hand again. Just give me a chance to make this right. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly. But I'd learned something over these past 2 weeks. I couldn't trust my own instincts when it came to Marcus anymore. Everything I'd believed about our marriage had been wrong. Every certainty had turned out to be an illusion. We'll see, I said, one day at a time. We walked back to the cabin in silence. Emma was reading on the couch when we came in, and she looked up with those 2 knowing eyes. Ready to go home? I asked her, forcing brightness into my voice. Yeah. She grabbed her bag. Can I ride in front? Marcus started to object. She was supposed to be in the back until she was older. But I caught his eye and shook my head. Sure, baby. You can ride in front. The drive home was quiet. Marcus tried a few times to start conversations that died almost immediately. Emma dozed against the window, and I watched the highway lights flash past and wondered how we'd gotten here. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. How's the weekend? I typed back. I told him I know. 3 dots appeared immediately. And? And he's moving out tomorrow, I think. Jesus, are you okay? No, but I will be. I hoped that was true. When we pulled into our driveway at 11 p.m., the house looked the same as it had 3 days ago, but everything felt different. Marcus unloaded the car in silence while Emma trudged upstairs to bed. I stood in the kitchen and tried to remember what normal had felt like, but the memory was already slipping away. Jenna, Marcus said from the doorway, I meant what I said at the lake. I want to fix this. Then prove it. Tomorrow. Pack your things and give us both some space to think. He nodded slowly. Where will I go? That's not my problem anymore. The coldness in my voice surprised even me. You have friends. You have colleagues. Figure it out. After he went upstairs, I sat alone in the dark kitchen and let myself fall apart. Not crying. I was beyond tears now, just sitting with the wreckage of everything I'd believed my life to be. Around midnight, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Emma appeared in her pajamas, her hair tangled from sleep. Can't sleep? I asked. She shook her head and climbed into my lap, even though she was getting too big for this. I held her and rocked slightly, the way I had when she was small and afraid of thunderstorms. Is Dad really leaving tomorrow? For a little while. Just so we can all think about things. Did he cheat on you? With that Vanessa lady? I closed my eyes. I'd promised myself I wouldn't lie to my daughter about this. She deserved the truth, even if it hurt. Yes. Emma was quiet for a long moment, then, I hate him. No, you don't. I do. He made you sad. He ruined everything. He made a mistake, a big one. But he's still your dad, and he loves you more than anything. I pulled back to look at her face. Whatever happens between him and me, that doesn't change. You get to be mad at him, but you don't have to choose sides. What if I want to choose sides? Then choose your own side. Take care of yourself. Let us handle the adult stuff. She buried her face against my shoulder. I just want things to go back to normal. Me too, baby, me too. Monday morning arrived grey and cold despite it being August. I called in sick to work for the third time that week. My boss was going to start asking questions soon, but I couldn't bring myself to care. Marcus came downstairs with 2 suitcases and an expression that suggested he'd slept as poorly as I had. I'm going to stay at the Marriott for now, he said, the one on Birchwood, and I blocked Vanessa's number this morning. Completely cut off, like you said. I didn't respond, just poured coffee I didn't want. Can I still pick up Emma from school? Take her to soccer practice? I don't want her to feel like I've abandoned her. Of course, you're still her father. I searched for the right words. Just be honest with her. Answer her questions if she asks. Don't make her protect your feelings. He flinched. I wouldn't do that. You've done a lot of things I didn't think you would do. After he left, I walked through the house, and it felt simultaneously too big and too small, all the spaces Marcus usually occupied, his office, his side of the bed. The garage where he tinkered with projects sat empty, waiting for him to come back. Would he come back? Did I want him to? I called Rachel. He's gone, moved out this morning. How are you feeling? Numb, like I'm going through the motions, but nothing's real. That's normal. You're in shock. What you need now is practical stuff. Have you thought about what you want, like actually want? Not what's best for Emma or what society expects, but what Jenna wants. I sat down on my bed, our bed, and tried to answer that question honestly. I want to not feel like an idiot. I want to know how I missed all the signs. I want to understand how we got here. Those aren't really wants, those are backward-looking questions. Then I don't know what I want. Okay, then let's start smaller. Do you want Marcus back? Did I? The man I'd loved was a stranger now, someone who'd been lying to me for months while planning his exit. But underneath that stranger was the man who'd proposed to me in a parking lot at midnight because he couldn't wait until morning. The man who'd cried when Emma was born. The man who'd held me when my father died and knew exactly what to say. Which version was real? Could they both be real? I want him back, I finally said. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. You want your marriage to be savable because walking away feels like failure. Is that so wrong? No, honey, it's human. But you can't save something alone. Marcus has to want it too, really want it, not just feel guilty and obligated. After we hung up, I did something I'd been putting off. I looked at Emma's social media. She was too young for most platforms, but she had an Instagram account I'd helped her set up for sharing her art. I'd been monitoring it loosely, trusting her to be responsible. Her most recent post was a drawing of a broken vase, the pieces scattered across a table. The caption read, "Sometimes broken things can't be glued back together," posted yesterday while we were still at the lake pretending everything was fine. My daughter was processing our family's collapse in public and I hadn't even noticed. I climbed the stairs to her room and knocked gently. "Can I come in?" "Yeah." Emma was lying on her bed with her sketchbook, drawing something I couldn't see from the doorway. I sat down beside her. "I saw your post, the broken vase." She kept drawing, her pencil moving in quick, sure strokes. "Do you think Dad's going to come back?" "I don't know." "Are you going to let him?" "I don't know that either. This is all pretty new." Emma finally looked up at me. "Mia's parents got divorced last year. She said the worst part wasn't the divorce itself. It was the 6 months before when they kept trying to make it work and everyone was miserable. She said she wished they'd just gotten it over with." "Do you feel like that? Like you wish we'd just get it over with?" "I don't know. Maybe." She went back to her drawing. "I just don't want to spend the next 6 months with everyone walking on eggshells and pretending things are okay when they're not." My 12-year-old was wiser than I was. That afternoon, after dropping Emma at soccer practice, I did something impulsive. I drove to the Marriott. I didn't know what I was going to say. I just knew I needed to see Marcus in his self-imposed exile, needed to witness what our separation looked like from his side. I found him in the hotel restaurant, sitting alone at a corner table with his laptop open. He looked exhausted, his shirt wrinkled, his hair unwashed. When he saw me approach, something like hope flickered across his face. "Jenna, is everything okay? Is Emma—" "Emma's fine. I sat down across from him. "I need to ask you something and I need you to be completely honest." "Okay." "Do you love her?" "Vanessa. Not are you in love with her, but do you actually love her as a person?" Marcus closed his laptop slowly. "Why does that matter?" "Because if this was just sex, if it was just physical, then maybe we can get past it. But if you actually developed feelings for her, if you built something real with her while you were married to me, then I need to know that. I need to know what I'm competing with." He was quiet for a long time. Around us, the lunch crowd chattered and laughed, oblivious to the marriage dissolving in the corner booth. "I care about her," he finally said. "A lot. But love? I don't know if what I feel is love or just escape. A fantasy where I don't have to be the guy who got married too young and missed out on figuring out who he was supposed to be." The honesty was gutting. "So I'm the cage. Our marriage is the thing you wanted to escape from." "No, God, no. You're the best thing that ever happened to me." He reached across the table and I let him take my hand. But sometimes I look at my life and I can't figure out how much of it I chose versus how much just happened to me. Does that make sense? You chose to marry me. You proposed, Marcus. I didn't trap you. I know, and I meant it when I proposed. But Jenna, we were 23. We barely knew ourselves, let alone each other. We built this whole life on the foundation of an unplanned pregnancy, and yeah, we made it work. But was it ever really what either of us wanted? I pulled my hand back. It was what I wanted. Every day I chose you, chose us, chose this life. So don't project your doubts onto me. You're right, I'm sorry. He rubbed his face tiredly. I'm not making excuses. I fucked up. I know that. I just don't know how to fix it when part of me isn't even sure what I want to fix. Then figure it out. But don't string me along while you do. Don't keep me in limbo hoping you'll suddenly wake up and realize you want your family back. What are you saying? I stood up. I'm saying we need real separation. Not this half measure where you're at a hotel, but we're still talking every day and co-parenting like everything's normal. You need to figure out who you are and what you want, and I need to figure out if I can ever trust you again. How long? I don't know. A month, maybe. We'll handle Emma's schedule and necessary logistics, but otherwise we don't talk. You don't call just to check in. We don't do family dinners. Real space. Marcus's eyes were shining with tears. Okay, if that's what you need. It's what we both need. I walked out of the hotel and didn't look back. The next few days were strange, like living in a house that had been gutted by a flood. Everything looked the same on the surface, but underneath everything was damaged. Emma went to school and soccer practice and acted mostly normal, though I caught her crying in her room one night. Marcus texted only about practical things. When he'd pick up Emma, when he'd pay which bills, whether Emma needed her science textbook that she'd left in his car. On Thursday, Vanessa called me. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. Hello? Jenna, I'm sorry for calling. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from. She sounded nervous. But I needed you to know that Marcus called me, before he blocked my number. He told me it was over, that he was going to try to save his marriage. Why are you telling me this? Because I wanted you to know that I'm stepping back. Completely. I'm not going to try to contact him. I'm not going to interfere. I wanted you to hear that from me. Do you want a medal? No, I want to apologize, really apologize, woman to woman, human to human. I knew he was married and I knew he had a daughter, and I let myself believe his story about you being on the verge of divorce because it made what we were doing feel less wrong. But it was wrong, and I'm sorry. I sat down on the couch, suddenly exhausted. Are you in love with him, Vanessa? I thought I was, but I think maybe I was just in love with not being alone, with feeling wanted after my ex destroyed me. She took a shaky breath. Marcus is a good man. Whatever you decide, I hope you know that. If he's such a good man, why did he do this? I don't know. I've been asking myself the same thing. Maybe good people sometimes make terrible choices. Maybe nobody's all good or all bad. Maybe... She trailed off. I don't know, I'm sorry, I should let you go. Vanessa, I said before she could hang up, did he ever talk about me? About our marriage? He talked about you all the time, how smart you were, how good a mother you were, how you held everything together. He admired you. I think maybe that was part of the problem. He put you on a pedestal and then felt inadequate next to you. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet house and tried to process that. Marcus felt inadequate next to me. The man with the successful career and the easy charm and the ability to make friends wherever he went felt inadequate next to me, the woman who'd built her whole identity around being a wife and mother. It didn't make sense. But then, nothing about this made sense. That weekend, Emma asked if she could stay with my mother for a few days. I need a break from everything, she said, and Grandma keeps asking when I'm coming to visit. Are you running away from me and your dad? I'm running away from the situation. It's different. My wise, heartbreaking daughter. I drove her to my mother's house on Saturday morning. Mum was having a good day, lucid and sharp, her eyes clear. She took one look at me and knew. Marcus, we're separated. He had an affair. She pulled me into a hug and I let myself cry for the first time since the lake. Emma tactfully disappeared into the guest room. What are you going to do? Mum asked when I finally pulled away. I don't know. Everyone keeps asking me that, and I don't know. Do you still love him? I don't know if I do or if I'm just used to loving him. How do you tell the difference? Mum smiled sadly. If I knew that, I might have left your father years before he died. I stared at her. What? Your father wasn't always a good husband. He was a good father, a good provider. But as a husband, she shook her head. He had his own Vanessa, more than one actually. I stayed because of you kids, because of what divorce would have cost me financially and socially, because I'd been raised to believe you made your bed and lay in it. But Jenna, you don't have to do that. You have options I never had. Why didn't you ever tell me? What was the point? He's dead, and the anger died with him. She squeezed my hand. But you're still living. You get to decide what kind of life you want. And whatever you decide, I'll support you. That night, alone in the house for the first time since Marcus had left, I made myself dinner and ate it at the dining room table where we'd had thousands of family meals. The silence was deafening. My phone rang. Marcus. I almost didn't answer. We were supposed to be in real separation, but something made me pick up. Jenna, I'm sorry. I know we said space, but I needed to tell you something. What? I went to see a therapist today about everything, and she helped me realize something. He took a breath. I've been depressed. For years, probably. But I didn't recognize it because I thought depression was just being sad all the time. I didn't understand it could look like numbness and going through the motions and feeling like you're watching your life from outside. I didn't know what to say. She said depression can make you do destructive things, he continued. Make choices that blow up your life, because at least then you feel something. And I think that's what happened with Vanessa. I'm not saying it's an excuse. I still made those choices. But I think I need help. Professional help. And I wanted you to know that I'm going to get it. Okay. Okay. That's it? What do you want me to say, Marcus? That you being depressed makes the affair okay? That it erases the last 6 months? No. I just wanted you to understand. I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to see you as something other than the person who destroyed our family. But right now, I'm just tired. I closed my eyes. I'm glad you're getting help. I really am. But it doesn't change what you did. It doesn't make the hurt go away. I know, I'm sorry. I'll let you go. After he hung up, I sat in the dark and thought about depression, about how mental illness could make people act in ways that seemed incomprehensible from the outside, about whether that changed anything. On Monday, I went back to work. My boss, Karen, called me into her office first thing. Jenna, I'm worried about you. You've used more sick days in the last 3 weeks than in the last 3 years combined. And when you are here, you're not yourself. What's going on? I'd been rehearsing lies, but when the moment came, I found I didn't have the energy. My husband had an affair. We're separated. It's been difficult. Karen's face softened. Oh, Jenna, I'm so sorry. Why didn't you say something? Because saying it out loud makes it real. Do you need to take some leave? We can work something out. FMLA maybe, or... No, I need to work. I need something normal, something I can control. I managed a weak smile. But thank you. Really. The rest of the week passed in a blur of meetings and spreadsheets and pretending I was fine. My co-workers knew something was wrong, but were too polite to ask directly. I ate lunch alone and dove into projects that required intense focus, anything to keep my mind occupied. On Wednesday, my mother called. Emma wanted to stay another week. Is she okay? I asked. She's processing, in her own way. She's drawing a lot, spending time in the garden, asking me questions about marriage and divorce. Mom paused. She asked me if I thought you and Marcus would get back together. What did you tell her? That I didn't know, but that whatever happened, she'd be okay. Was that wrong? No, that's perfect. After work, I drove past the Marriott without meaning to. Marcus's car was in the parking lot. I wondered what he did all day. If he was working from his hotel room, if he was going to therapy, if he was thinking about me at all, or if he'd already moved on in his mind. I kept driving. That Friday, Rachel convinced me to go out for dinner. You need to get out of the house, see other humans, remember that life exists outside this crisis. We went to a Thai place downtown and I tried to care about the menu and the conversation and the world around me. Rachel told me about her kids' latest drama, about a work project that was driving her crazy, about the vacation she and Dave were planning. Your turn, she said over pad thai. How are you actually doing? I feel like I'm standing in the rubble of something that used to be a building, and everyone keeps asking me what I'm going to build next, and I'm still just trying to understand what happened to the first building. I pushed rice around my plate. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. But Jenna, at some point you're going to have to make a decision, stay or go, fight for the marriage or walk away. You can't live in limbo forever. Why not? People live in limbo all the time. Do they live, though, or do they just exist? That night, I dreamed about the lake house. In the dream, Marcus and I were young again, before Emma, before the weight of all our years together. We were swimming in the dark water, and he kept diving down, disappearing beneath the surface for longer and longer stretches. I kept calling for him to come back up, but he couldn't hear me, or wouldn't. I woke up, gasping. On Saturday, Emma came home. She seemed calmer, more centered. She hugged me for a long time without speaking. "Did you miss me?" I asked. "Yeah, but I needed the break. Grandma's good at letting me just be, you know? She doesn't try to fix everything." "I'm sorry if I've been trying too hard to fix things." "You're doing okay, Mom, considering." That evening, Marcus came to pick Emma up for their first weekend together since the separation. He looked better than he had at the hotel, showered, clean clothes, something like hope in his eyes. "Hey, Em, ready for our weekend?" Emma grabbed her bag. "Where are we going?" "I got us an Airbnb. It has a pool. I thought we could just hang out, maybe watch some movies, order pizza, whatever you want." After they left, the house felt emptier than ever. I wandered from room to room, picking up objects and putting them down again, unable to settle. Finally, I ended up in Marcus's office. His desk was exactly as he had left it, coffee mug with dried residue, post-it notes with reminders, a photo of the three of us from last Christmas. We looked happy in that photo. Emma was making a silly face, Marcus had his arms around both of us, and I was laughing at something off camera. Had we been happy, or had I just been oblivious? I opened his desk drawer, not really looking for anything specific, just looking. There were the usual things: pens, paper clips, old receipts, but tucked in the back was a small notebook I'd never seen before. I opened it. It was a journal. Marcus's handwriting filled page after page, dates going back almost 2 years. January 15th. Had a long talk with Jay today about whether we're happy. She said of course we are. But how can she be so sure? I don't even know what happy feels like anymore. March 3rd. Emma asked me today if I was okay. She's 10 years old and she can tell something's wrong, but I can't even name it. July 22nd. Saw a couple at the restaurant today, probably in their 20s, just starting out. They looked at each other like the world was ending and beginning at the same time. I can't remember the last time Jay and I looked at each other like that. Maybe we never did. Maybe we skipped the falling in love part and went straight to being an old married couple. October 9th. Sometimes I think about what my life would have been if Emma hadn't happened. Not that I regret her. I could never regret her. But who would I have been? What would I have done? I'll never know now. I sat on the floor of his office and read 2 years of Marcus's secret thoughts. His doubts about our marriage, his fears about being a good father, his struggles with feeling trapped and guilty for feeling trapped, his slow recognition that something was wrong inside him, not with our marriage but with himself. And then, 6 months ago, the entries changed. April 12th. Met someone today. Old friend from grad school. She's going through a divorce and needed advice. Felt good to be helpful. To be seen as someone who has answers. April 30th. Had coffee with V again. She makes me laugh. I haven't laughed like that in so long. May 15th. I think I'm developing feelings for her. This is bad. This is so bad. But I can't seem to stop. June 2nd. Told V. I'm thinking about leaving Jay. She was surprised. Said she thought we seemed happy. That's the problem. Everyone thinks we're happy. Maybe we are happy. Maybe I'm the problem. June 20th. Kissed V today. I'm a terrible person, but I felt alive for the first time in years. The entries stopped there, like he'd realized keeping a written record of his affair was too dangerous. I sat with the notebook in my lap and felt something shift inside me. Because these entries told a different story than the one I'd been constructing. This wasn't a man who'd stopped loving his wife and fallen for someone new. This was a man who'd been drowning for years and had grabbed onto Vanessa like a life raft. It didn't excuse what he'd done, but it explained it in a way that nothing else had. When Emma and Marcus came back Sunday evening, Emma ran upstairs to her room and Marcus lingered in the doorway. "How was your weekend?" I asked. "Good, really good, actually. We just hung out, talked. She asked me a lot of hard questions." He smiled sadly. "She's handling this better than we are." "Marcus, I found your journal." The colour drained from his face. "What?" "In your office. I was looking for... I don't know what I was looking for, but I found it." And I read it. "Jenna, those were private thoughts. You had no right." "You're right, I didn't. But I'm glad I did, because now I finally understand." I moved closer to him. "You've been struggling for years. Years, Marcus. And you never told me. You just kept it all inside and let it poison you until you did something destructive enough to blow everything up." He couldn't meet my eyes. I didn't know how to talk about it, didn't even know what it was. How do you tell your wife that you're not sure you ever really wanted to get married? That you love her but you also resent her, even though none of it is her fault? You just say it. You say, "Jenna, I'm struggling. I need help. I need us to talk about some hard things." You don't have an affair and then act surprised when your marriage falls apart. I know. God, I know. He finally looked at me, and the pain in his eyes was raw. I've destroyed the best thing in my life because I couldn't figure out how to ask for help. So what now? I don't know. What do you want? I took a breath. I want you to keep going to therapy. I want you to figure out why you sabotaged us. And I want us to try counseling. Together. Not because I've forgiven you or because everything's okay, but because I need to understand if there's anything left worth saving. Hope flickered across his face. Really? Really? But Marcus, if we do this, you have to be all in. No more secrets, no more running away when things get hard. Complete honesty, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. I can do that, I promise. Don't promise me, just do it. That week I found a marriage counsellor. Dr. Sarah Hendricks came highly recommended with a specialty in infidelity recovery. Our first session was scheduled for the following Wednesday. In the meantime, life continued its strange new rhythm. Marcus was still at the hotel but came over for dinner twice that week. We were careful with each other, polite like diplomats negotiating a fragile peace treaty. Emma watched us both carefully, relaxing slightly when she saw we could be in the same room without fighting. On Tuesday night, my mother called. "Emma told me you're trying counselling. How do you feel about that?" Terrified, hopeful, angry, all of it at once. "That's normal. But Jenna, I want you to promise me something." "What?" "Promise me you won't stay just because you think you should. Not for Emma, not for the years you've already invested. Not because divorce seems like failure. Promise me you'll stay only if you want to." "I promise." But as I hung up, I wondered if I could keep that promise, because wanting was so complicated. I wanted my old life back. I wanted Marcus to be who I thought he was. I wanted Emma to have an intact family. But did I want the real Marcus? The one who'd lied and cheated and struggled in silence? Did I want a marriage that required this much work just to survive? I didn't know. Wednesday arrived, and Marcus picked me up for our first counselling session. We drove in silence, the weight of everything unsaid filling the car. Dr. Hendricks's office was warm and comfortable with soft lighting and chairs positioned at angles so we didn't have to look directly at each other if we didn't want to. She was in her 50s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanour. "Let's start with why you're here," she said after the introductions. Marcus and I both started talking at once, then stopped, then started again. Finally, Dr. Hendricks held up a hand. Jenna, why don't you go first? Tell me what brought you to my office. I told her everything. The garage conversation, finding the receipt following Marcus to Vanessa's apartment, the journal. Dr. Hendricks listened without judgment, taking occasional notes. And what do you want from counselling? She asked when I finished. I want to understand how we got here, and I want to know if we can get past it. Marcus? Your turn. Marcus shifted in his seat. I want my wife back. I want my family back. I want to undo what I did, but since I can't do that, I want to at least make it right somehow. What does making it right look like to you? I don't know. Proving I can be trustworthy again. Showing her I'm working on myself. Fixing whatever's broken inside me so I don't hurt her again. Doctor, Hendricks nodded. Here's what I want you both to understand from the outset. Healing from infidelity is possible, but it's not easy. It requires complete honesty, which means, Marcus, you're going to have to share things you might not want to share. And Jenna, it means you're going to hear things you might not want to hear. Can you both commit to that level of honesty? We both nodded. Good. Then let's start with this. Marcus, tell me about Vanessa. Not the affair itself, but who she is and what she represented to you. I braced myself. Marcus took a breath. Vanessa she's someone who saw me as I wanted to be seen. Not as a husband or father or provider, but just as myself. When I was with her, I didn't feel the weight of all my responsibilities. I felt light. Free. Each word was a knife. And what does that tell you about your marriage? Dr. Hendricks asked. That I felt trapped in it, even though I loved Jenna. Even though I chose this life. He looked at me, his eyes wet. I'm sorry, I know that hurts to hear. It does, I managed. But keep going. I think I built up this narrative where our marriage was the problem. Where if I could just get out, I'd suddenly be happy. But the truth is, I was depressed. I was struggling with my own identity and self-worth. And instead of dealing with that, I blamed our marriage and found someone who made me feel better temporarily. Dr. Hendricks turned to me. How does it feel to hear that? Honestly, it makes me angry, because I didn't know he was struggling. He never told me. So I couldn't help or support him, and now our marriage is destroyed because he kept secrets. Marcus, why didn't you tell Jenna what you were feeling? Because I didn't want to hurt her, and because part of me thought if I just pushed through it, it would get better on its own. And because, he trailed off, because why? Because I was ashamed. Good husbands don't feel trapped. Good fathers don't fantasize about different lives. Admitting I felt that way felt like admitting I was a failure. Dr. Hendricks leaned back. Here's what I'm hearing. Marcus, you've been carrying a tremendous amount of shame about your feelings, which led you to hide them, which led to isolation, which made you vulnerable to an affair. And Jenna, you've been operating under the assumption that your marriage was solid while your partner was silently falling apart. Does that sound accurate? We both nodded. Then here's your homework for next week. Marcus, I want you to write down every difficult feeling you've had about your marriage over the last 5 years that you never shared with Jenna. And Jenna, I want you to write down all the times you sensed something was wrong but talked yourself out of it. We're going to start building awareness of your patterns. As we left the session, Marcus walked me to my car. That was brutal, he said. Did you expect it to be easy? No, but hearing you say you're angry, I don't know. It made it more real somehow. I am angry, Marcus. I'm furious. But I'm also here, aren't I? I'm trying. So don't take that for granted. I drove home alone and immediately went to my laptop to start the homework. The times I'd sensed something was wrong but talked myself out of it. The list was longer than I expected. The night Marcus had come home at midnight claiming work ran late, but his breath smelled like wine. The weekend he'd said he was golfing with friends but came back without any dirt on his shoes. The times I'd reached for him in bed and he'd turned away claiming exhaustion. The morning I'd found an unfamiliar woman's earring in our car and accepted his explanation that a client had gotten a ride to a meeting. I'd sensed all of it. On some level I'd known, but I'd chosen to believe the lies because believing them was easier than confronting what they might mean. Had I been complicit in our marriage's death through willful blindness? The thought made me sick. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus and I fell into a routine of twice-weekly counselling sessions interspersed with careful, supervised contact. He came to dinner on Sundays. We had coffee together on Wednesdays after therapy. Every interaction was measured, intentional, like we were learning how to be around each other again. In our sessions, we excavated the history of our marriage, looking for fault lines. Dr. Hendricks pushed us to be specific about moments we'd felt disconnected, times we'd chosen silence over difficult conversations, patterns we'd developed that created distance. It was excruciating. But slowly something started to shift. Marcus began to open up about feelings he'd been carrying for years, his fear that he wasn't good enough, his resentment about getting married so young, his guilt about that resentment. And I started to acknowledge my own role in our problems, my tendency to avoid conflict, my habit of assuming everything was fine, my refusal to rock the boat even when I sensed something was wrong. You both fell into caretaking roles, Dr. Hendricks explained in our 4th session. Jenna, you took care of everyone else's feelings at the expense of your own. And Marcus, you protected Jenna from your struggles because you thought that's what a good husband did. But neither of you was actually being honest. So what do we do now? I asked. You learn a different way. You practice honesty even when it's uncomfortable. You share the hard feelings before they metastasize into something destructive. That night, Marcus asked if we could take a walk. Just around the neighborhood. Nothing major. Emma was at a friend's house, and the evening was cool, the summer heat finally breaking. I've been thinking about something Dr. Hendricks said, Marcus began as we walked past houses lit from within, other families living their uncomplicated lives. About how I protected you from my feelings. I think I've been doing that since before we were married. What do you mean? When you told me you were pregnant with Emma, I was terrified. I wanted to run. But you seemed so calm, so sure we could handle it, that I thought I had to be strong for you. So I pushed down the fear and proposed and acted like it was all part of the plan. But it wasn't. I was just pretending to be ready. I stopped walking. Are you saying you never wanted to marry me? No, I'm saying I wasn't ready to marry anyone, but I did it anyway because it was the right thing to do. And then I spent 14 years trying to convince myself I'd made the right choice. The tears came before I could stop them. So our entire marriage has been a lie. No, God, no, Jenna, listen to me. He took my hands. It started as obligation, yeah, but it became real. Somewhere along the way, I fell in love with you for real, with our life, with who we were as a family. That part wasn't a lie. Then why did you cheat? If you'd actually fallen in love with me, if our life was real, why wasn't that enough? Marcus was quiet for a long time. Because I don't know how to be content. I never learned it. There's always this voice in my head saying I'm missing out on something, that there's a better version of my life, just out of reach. And meeting Vanessa made that voice louder. Is she the better version? I thought she was, for a while. But she was just a fantasy, a way to escape reality. It wasn't real, Jenna. What we have, what we built, that's real. I just forgot it for a while. We walked home in silence, and I tried to decide if I believed him. If a marriage built on obligation could transform into something genuine. If loving someone meant accepting that they'd always wonder about the road not taken. That weekend, Emma asked if she could talk to me about something serious. Always, I said, bracing myself. I want to see a therapist too, like you and Dad, someone who can help me figure out how I feel about everything. Relief and sadness washed over me in equal measure. Of course, that's really mature of you to ask for that. It's just, I love both of you, but I'm also mad at Dad. And I feel guilty about being mad because I know he's sad. And I'm scared you're going to get divorced even though you're trying counseling. And I just need someone to help me sort it all out. I pulled her close. You shouldn't have to sort this out. You're 12. You should be worried about homework and soccer and friend drama, not your parents' marriage. But I am worried about it, so I might as well deal with it, right? I found Emma a therapist who specialized in helping kids navigate divorce and separation. Her first appointment was the following Tuesday. When I picked her up afterwards, she seemed lighter. How was it? I asked. Good, she's nice. She said it's okay to be mad at Dad, that I don't have to protect his feelings just because he's sad. My mother had said something similar to me. Apparently, we were a family of people who tried too hard to protect each other's feelings. In our next counseling session, Dr. Hendricks dropped a bomb. I want to talk about what rebuilding trust actually means, she said. Because, Jenna, you keep saying you want to trust Marcus again. But trust isn't a light switch. It's something you build incrementally through consistent action over time. I know that. Do you? Because from what I'm hearing, you're waiting for some magical moment when you'll suddenly feel safe with him again. But that's not how it works. You have to be willing to take small risks while he proves himself. Which means you'll be vulnerable. Potentially hurt. Again. The thought terrified me. What if I take those risks and he betrays me again? Then you'll survive it just like you're surviving this. But Jenna, if you're not willing to risk being hurt again, this marriage is already over. You're just going through the motions. I looked at Marcus. Are you willing to do whatever it takes to earn back my trust? Yes, completely. Even if it means I check your phone randomly, monitor your whereabouts, ask invasive questions. He nodded. I've already given you access to everything. Phone, email, location sharing, all of it. I have nothing to hide. Dr. Hendricks interjected. That's a start. But Marcus, you also have to understand that some of this is out of your control. You can do everything right, and Jenna might still struggle to trust you. That's the consequence of betrayal. You broke something, and the pieces don't fit back together the same way. I understand, Marcus said quietly. As we left the session, I felt the weight of what Dr. Hendricks had said. I had to choose, either commit to the terrifying work of rebuilding trust or accept that our marriage was over and start grieving it properly. That night, I lay awake thinking about choice, about how much of our lives we actually controlled versus how much just happened to us. Marcus had chosen to have an affair. I'd chosen to stay and try counseling. Emma had chosen to ask for her own therapist. We were all making choices, trying to navigate the wreckage. But what did I actually want? Rachel's question from weeks ago echoed in my mind. Not what was best for Emma, not what people expected, but what I actually wanted. I wanted to not feel like a fool. I wanted to believe our marriage had been real, that the good years counted for something. I wanted Marcus to prove he could be the partner I needed. I wanted our family intact. But underneath all of that, the truth I'd been avoiding. I wanted to be chosen. Not out of obligation or guilt or because staying was easier than leaving, but because Marcus actually wanted me, wanted us, wanted this life. And I didn't know if that was possible anymore. The next morning I called Marcus before I could second-guess myself. I need to know something, I said without preamble. If you could go back and choose differently, not marry me, live a different life, would you? He was quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. Marcus? I'm here, That's a hard question. I know, answer it anyway. Honestly. Part of me will always wonder what that other life would have been like. But Jenna, that's true for everyone. Everyone wonders about the roads not taken. It doesn't mean I'd actually choose differently. But it also doesn't mean you're sure you'd choose the same. No, he admitted, it doesn't. And I'm sorry that's not the answer you want to hear, but I promised you honesty. After we hung up, I sat with that answer. He wasn't sure. After 14 years, after a daughter, after building a life together, he still wasn't sure he'd choose it again. Could I live with that uncertainty? Could anyone? I thought about my mother and father, about how she'd stayed despite his affairs, despite not being sure it was the right choice, about how she'd made it work through sheer force of will and societal pressure and the belief that marriage was forever, no matter what. I didn't want to be my mother. But I also didn't want to be the woman who gave up at the first real test of her marriage.